watch this later. All right. But I believe I just hit it. So there we go. And on behalf of DIIT, I want to issue a very warm welcome. My name is Laura Ogando, and I serve as the Deputy Director of Technology for Manhattan. We have Lisa Nielsen, who serves as our Senior Technology Director. Our cost assistant, she's on the back end. She's going to drop all the important links you need today. And when we get to the end and it's time for attendance, she'll put that in as well. So if you're new here, you don't know what's going on, don't worry, we got you covered. Just make sure you keep that chat open, because the chat is going to be where we give you all of those really important nuggets. All right. And also want to let you know, if you haven't been going regularly, we have some really fabulous office hours that happen pretty much every Wednesday. They're really, really great. I honestly learn a lot at office hours. There's things that I'm made aware of. So if you don't know about this, you do now. They happen every single Wednesday. You can bring your tech questions. Sometimes you can just listen in, because someone might ask something. You're like, oh, wait, yeah, we've had that issue. Oh, yeah. We get a lot of our DIIT folks in there. So if you don't know your BTD, you will by coming to office hours. It's fabulous. In fact, I believe some of our fabulous BTDs are here in the house right now. I definitely saw Sandy from my team in Manhattan show up. And I think I just let Francisco in. So like I said, office hours is a great place to connect with some of us, learn who we are, because we are valuable. And hey, Sandy, I see you. Hey, Francisco, I see you too. So again, you're going to want to make friends with them, because when you feel like you want to rip your hair out, when you feel like you're like, oh, you're going to have your BTD, and they will hopefully save the day, or at least they'll find someone who can help you save the day. So in order to get access to that, you're going to join our SPOC team. We'll drop a link for that. But really, the SPOC team is where you can go as well. Even, outside of office hours, if you have a question, we've got a ton of different channels in the SPOC team. We've got partners in there. So if you're having an issue with, something Adobe related, or one of our other enterprise technology tools, you can go in there. There's a lot of great folks who will crowdsource information and help you. That's the beauty of our community. We're all kind of trying to pitch in and help. And I see another one of our BTDs. Hey, Wayne Henry from Brooklyn. So like I said, come to office hours. You'll get to meet them more. They're very cool people, and they can help you when the stuff is, on the fritz. They also can just help you when stuff is not on the fritz too. All right, so you know how we do. Let's find out who is in our Zoom room. I'm going to launch our poll here in just a second. Let me get it up. All right, so you should see on your screen that who is in our Zoom room. We're nosy folks. We like to know who's here. So feel free to let us know who you are. And while we're doing that, I just want to acknowledge it's a week of appreciating our teachers, appreciating the folks that make this happen. And I know that a lot of you are parent coordinators. A lot of you have assumed some teacher type roles, especially because you're turnkeying this information to your schools. So I want to acknowledge you as well. You are taking on those roles. You're helping your community. You're teaching them about these really valuable skills. So I just want to shout you out too. It's amazing. This is also Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think in particular, anyone anyone who works with families and with students, you got to take care of your mental health, right? This is a tough job. A lot is asked of us. So I just want to acknowledge that we got to take care of ourselves. We have to make sure that, we put that mask on before we assist others. So just keep that in mind. I actually happened to be in the Bronx earlier this week for Bronx Education All-Star Day. Shout out to my Bronx folks. It was fabulous. I'd never been before. That was like the most awesome thing I'd ever been to. Witnessing students who were being recognized for all sorts of fabulous things that they're doing in their communities, speaking to their peers. It was like my little teacher heart was totally crying. I was like, no, oh my God, that's too cute. But happened to be hanging with a woman from the I Can Help organization. Gave me a fabulous t-shirt to display. And again, just keeping in mind that you're not alone, right? We can help each other. We can stamp out the negativity. So it's been a full week. I'm having all the feels. So with that, I think most folks all filled out this poll, and I see we are overwhelmingly parent coordinators, which is beautiful. But welcome to our family support coordinators, our family leadership coordinators. We got a school secretary in the house and a teacher. I love it. A couple of other folks. Here you go. I'll share the results so you can see who's in the room too. But again, welcome to everybody. And really quick, if this is your first Space Friday, all right, let us know in the chat. We want to shout you out too. Welcome to this fabulous, wild and crazy community. Actually, no, this is the best community ever. This is my favorite PD community to be part of. This is my favorite one. Don't tell the others, but and I see, oh, Miss Garcia, first meeting. Welcome. So excited to have a newbie. This is going to be your first meeting, but it won't be your last. I'll tell you that much. You're going to get hooked like everybody else does. All right, let me launch our next poll. Hold on here, because you already know we got to find out, how are you feeling? So let's launch that. Hopefully you're like me, you're feeling a mix of, energy and excitement and happiness. But it's okay to feel tired, because like I said, it's been a long week. I was quite tired yesterday. I think like the 3 o'clock hour hit and I was like, whew, been a whole week on a Thursday. So it's okay. All feelings are valid. Remember, if you're not seeing something that applies, scroll down. Maybe you're all of the above. Maybe you're none of the above. You're like, none of these feelings really encapsulates what I'm doing right now. And that's okay too. And oh, we got a couple of other first meeting folks. So welcome to Tony Jones. Welcome to Anna Pinsky. I think I said that correctly. So welcome. We're so excited to have our first timers here. Like I said, it's going to be your first time, won't be your last time. And I'll give folks about 10 more seconds to fill out your feelings. Transparent facilitation moment. It's always good to check in with your audience. If you're doing workshops virtually for your families, virtually for your staff, really any type of workshop, always nice to just check in. It's a really quick way of saying like, hey, I see you, I hear you, I get it, right? Mental Health Awareness Month, folks. Like, we should always be doing this, but especially now, okay? All right, so I'm gonna wrap our poll up and I will share the results. As per usual, we're tired, but we're all, I can still. So again, thank you for filling that out and for sharing that with us. Hopefully, as the day goes on, you continue to feel all the feels. And by this afternoon on your way home and into the weekend, you enjoy yourself, because it's beautiful weather out there, folks. I walked this morning on the way to work and I was like soaking it all in. By the time I leave, I'm gonna be sweating. I break out in a sweat in a heartbeat, but enjoy the sunshine. Vitamin D. Mm-hmm. All right, so just want to let you know, we are coming up on our final session. I know, can you believe it? It's going to be June 16th. So in just over a month from now, we'll do our end of year celebration, wrap us up, but we will be back next year. So don't fret. We'll take a little hiatus over the summer while everyone relaxes and rests and recharges for the next school year. But we'll be celebrating June 16th. And remember, it's so important. Just like we learn and we grow and we level up our skills, also important to acknowledge that work. So don't skip out on the celebration. Even if you can stay for just a few minutes, it's important that as a community, we acknowledge all of your hard work. You guys are doing awesome. I get folks who regularly reach out to me and say, hey, that PD you did, I used it at my school. I was able to present something. And that's the stuff I want to hear, but I want this community to hear as well. All right, so without further ado, it is time to learn. We got to do the thing. All right, my friend Regis is in the house. I'm gonna turn it over to Regis and Michael, who are gonna share all of those really, really fabulous resources to keep that reading work going.
Okay.
Awesome.
So, Regis, can we just do some introductions? I'll outline summer reading programs, and then you can take over with SORA.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Awesome. So my name is Michael Dodes. I'm with the Office of Library Services for the DOE, serving under Melissa Jacobs, who's my director of all school libraries in the city. And what we're focusing on today is the citywide digital library on SORA, which is this the one great thing that came out of the pandemic, we like to say. Of all the miserable things that came out, this is one of the good things. We got a reading platform for all kids that's curated by expert librarians, by people in our office, paid for by Central, and available to all students. I just want to, as we're kind of going to the end of the year wind down, we want to keep an eye on summer reading for our kids, young and old. And as we all know, summer slide is a real thing. Our kids let their brains go for a couple months and they come back and they're a couple weeks or months behind, and then it takes time to catch up. That's what we're talking about with summer slide. So what do we need for that to counteract it? Kids need to have their brains engaged. They need to be involved in programs that keep them involved socially, that keep them learning, that keep them curious. But also important to that is at least 15 to 20 minutes a day of reading. And that reading can come from anywhere. It can come from books that they check out from their school library and their school librarian. It can come from books they check out from their public library, or it can come from an ebook that they check out on SORA. SORA is just one of the most equitable versions because you don't have to have distance, you don't have to commute to it, you don't have to have a school librarian or a school library facility. Your kids all have access. They just need to be granted that access and given the choice, and then given the opportunity to read books that they choose. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Regis to introduce the Citywide Digital Library, but also keep in mind that while this is an amazing tool for summer reading, it's also not the end all be all of all reading. It can come from any of these sources that you help them with.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Laura and team, for inviting me here today. I'm happy to share with you the Citywide Digital Library on SORA. We often call that the CDL, so I'll be abbreviating a little bit here. I'm going to share my screen, and as I do so, if you'd like, feel free to put in the chat whether you've used the CDL on SORA. If you haven't, if you're a newcomer, any feedback is always good. I'll be keeping my eye on the chat sort of in the corner of my screen here. And that said, we're going to jump right into it. Here we go. I do just want to put both my info and Michael's info here for a moment. As Michael said, he's the Queens Library Coordinator. Feel free to reach out to him, or if you know your borough's library coordinator, you can reach out to them as well. Me, Regis Kostelak, I am the account manager for NYC Public Schools at Overdrive. And Overdrive is the company that provides SORA, SORA being the app itself. So if you have any questions about SORA specifically, you can always go to your library coordinator, but you can also just shoot me an email there at nycsora@overdrive.com. So I want to make sure you have access to those email addresses. And a quick agenda, some things we're going to cover today. A little bit of background on what the Citywide Digital Library is, and Michael provided some great context to begin with. I'm going to teach you how to access and sign into the CDL. And that's going to be really important, sort of turnkeying that information to your parents, to your students within the building. Making the most of digital. What are the tools that really make digital a beneficial component to your students' literacy habits? We'll talk about that. And then the fun part, I'm going to jump in and do a demo, show you the CDL, show you how it works. It's very easy, very intuitive, and we'll be able to play around a little bit. And then we'll get into some resources and wrap up. So where should you go from here? How can you get this information to your school community? We'll provide you with all that stuff. And we'll have time as well at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but it can go by so quickly. Michael or anyone else, feel free to just jump in if there are questions that we want to answer throughout, but also we'll have time at the end and we can go over them in more detail.
I'm all over chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Excellent. So that said, let's start with what is the CDL? What is the Citywide Digital Library? And Michael did such a great job of providing that background. I'm just going to highlight a couple of those points he talked about. Number one, it did come out of the pandemic. It was a response to school closures and students being remote or hybrid. And it really is a lasting effect of that. It's being built to be sustainable and extend far beyond the effects of COVID and the pandemic. But it is at its foundation a library. It's just a digital library provided to all the students in the NYC public schools. It's a collection of ebooks, audiobooks, and even beyond that, magazines, comic books, read-along books, and we'll talk about what all of those things are. It's been curated with the collection development policy and selection criteria in mind. So all of these books are age appropriate. They are all excellent, excellent titles that you can feel great about your students having access to. One thing that I will note here, it is filtered based on students' grade levels. So when students log in, our system understands what grade they are in and will only show them appropriate books. So you as staff members may log in and see everything in the collection. You'll see high school age books, even if you're at an elementary school. That's okay. Your elementary school students will only see elementary school titles. Your middle school students will see elementary and middle school titles. And your high school students will have access to even more. So just keep that in mind. And a few highlights of the Citywide Digital Library. Number one, it's selected by content experts. It is selected by your Office of Library Services, along with some folks in the central offices of curriculum and literacy. These are really excellent titles that have been picked by NYC Public Schools. It emphasizes diversity and CRSE principles. So you're going to find some really excellent content here that all of your students, no matter what their background, will find themselves reflected in. So a really robust collection here. As I mentioned, it is for all grade levels. So that is pre-K or 3K through 12. So as students go up in grade level, as they even move to different schools, they will still use this same app, this same platform, this same way of logging in to access whatever book they're now reading. So it's very, very easy from that perspective. And there are also titles to support professional development. So I know as we're talking about summer reading and summer rising and continuing literacy skills, that can extend to your staff as well. So one way to get your staff involved and get them excited maybe is to say, hey, go look at some of the professional titles that are in the collection and you guys do a book club over the summer. That can be a fun way to get them comfortable with the platform itself. All right, so that's some background around what the Citywide Digital Library is. A different way of looking at it is sort of this circle here that encompasses all of the things that the CDL might do. At the top here, you'll see the Citywide Digital Library. That is really fundamentally the library, the independent reading aspect of it, where students are going to find books that they're excited about, that they want to read. If we go sort of clockwise there, you'll see curriculum titles. There are books that are involved in lots of different curricula, and we know that there are different curricula coming down the pipeline, especially for elementary. Those books will be available on the Citywide Digital Library. If we continue through there are lots of books for Ls and MLL students, right? So books in other languages. There are many, many languages represented. So you can go in and if your students, are more comfortable in Spanish or Chinese or Ukrainian or whatever it is that they're looking for, you can feel comfortable that there are options for them to read digitally, which may not always be true when they're only limited to the books that are either at their school building or especially as we talk about over the summer period, they may not have access to those books at all. So it's a great resource for those students. Summer reading, right? These books are available 24/7, right? The library does not close. The Citywide Digital Library is always open. So it is a great opportunity for students that maybe would have limited access to books over the summer to continue reading. And that is so important. That is what we're trying to do here. As Michael said, this is just a component of the overall literacy goals that we have for these students. But it is really important to know that they can access it whenever they need to and wherever they are. So whether they're bouncing around to different locations, if they're on vacation, whatever it is, they have access as long as they can connect to the internet. And special ed support. There are lots of accessibility tools here that make this an accessible tool to use with any student, regardless of their reading level, whether they're on IEPs or 504s. This is a great resource to be able to use. So again, just a different way of thinking about why are we using this? What is included here? Lots of stuff, all of this. So let's talk now about signing into the CDL. I see some questions coming in the chat regarding to this, so this is a good place to start. Before I even click to the next slide, I'm going to mention anyone in the NYC Public School domain that has an email address for staff, it would be at schools.nyc.gov. For students, it's there at nycstudents.net. Anyone that has that email address can access the citywide digital library. So that's staff and students, as long as they're in the public schools. As far as parents, we would encourage parents to connect into their students' accounts to make sure that you're logging on home devices, whether those are computers or tablets, or depending on the age of the student, phones, or even a parent's phone, using their student accounts to make sure that when they're at home, they have access to a device that can connect to the citywide digital library. As far as signing in, they just sign in with that email address, very easy. They can access the CDL on SORA on any device that accesses the internet in a number of different ways. One, they can go straight through TeachHub. It is available in TeachHub. You should see it there. You can just click on the SORA icon and you'll go straight to the login page. You can also download the app for your devices, whether that's a phone or a tablet. It's available in the Apple App Store or the Android App Store. And again, that's just SORA, S-O-R-A, and you'll see our little SORA icon there. Just download the app and you can access. Or if you're on a Chromebook, you don't want to go through TeachHub or whatever else, you can just open a browser and go to soraapp.com. The nice thing is, you may use a combination of these methods to access it. You may be reading on a Chromebook in school and switch over to a phone or a home device at home. And that's okay because your progress will be synced between devices. So if I'm reading on my computer and I get about halfway in the book and then I open it up on my phone, it's exactly where I left off. The nice thing here too is when you borrow a book, it's going to automatically download to the device so that you can use it offline. So if you do have students that have maybe spotty internet at home or don't have reliable access to internet, this is a great way to check the book out. It downloads onto your device and you can access it anywhere. You're not dependent on having constant access to an internet connection. And I do see a question in the chat here that Michael address, but I want to make sure everyone hears it. Someone asked if this is free. This is paid for centrally by the DOE, by the Office of Library Services and the central offices. So this is no cost to the schools itself. This is no cost to the parents or the families. These books are already provided for and you can access them anytime. All right, so just to recap again, you can sign in with almost any device. You can go through TeachHub, you can get the app. If you have school issued iPads or tablets like that, the app should already be downloaded. And you just sign in that one time with your email address and you're logged on. Making the most of digital. And again, really here, I want to talk about what are some of the key features that make digital a real benefit to students into their literacy development. This is maybe new for some folks using ebooks and audiobooks. So it's important to just go over some of these very basic tools that your students will pick up on very, very quickly, but it's important to know that they're there. So first and foremost, notes and highlights. When you're using an ebook or even an audiobook for that matter, you can actually highlight passages right in the text and it will save those notes. You can take notes and make comments about those passages, but it will save those notes and it will save those highlighted passages within the book for you, even after you've returned the book. So this is a library. You do return books when you're done with them after about 2 weeks. You can check them back out or renew them. But even if you no longer have the book checked out, you have access to your notes and highlights, and you can export those to Google Drive. So this is really great. I'm the type of person that writes in physical books. I highlight physical books. And so that's fine and dandy when it's a book that I own. It's very, very frowned upon when it's a library book that I've checked out. God forbid when I was in school and it was a school issued book, got in a lot of trouble for that. But that's how I learn. And so many students are that way, and you don't have that same concern when you're using digital books. They can mark it up, take as many notes and highlights as they need to right in the text. So very easy to use there, and I'll show you when we do the demo how that functionality works. The other thing that's in here are definitions. So you can just quickly highlight a word and get the definition, but even more so, you can translate that word. So again, if you're working with ELs, if you're working with students that are acquiring different languages, you can simply translate that word in the text and understand what is being said there. Some of the accessibility tools that I mentioned you may want to share with students. You can change the font and the text size. And I think this is easier when I show you to understand the benefit of it. But imagine looking at a book. When you're looking at a physical or a print book, you're dealing with the text as it is, as the publisher has published it essentially. And so if the text is too small for you, or if the font is a type that is unclear for you to read, it can be difficult. When you're reading an ebook, virtually any book can just be, those fonts can just be changed. So we can make them larger, we can make the text bold, we can make it a little easier to read. And when I show you that, I think you'll really connect with why that is important. And then a high contrast mode, I'll touch on that, and a sleep timer for audio. So I'll show you all of those tools, but these are really excellent functionality tools within the books themselves. So a little bit different here is the ability to scaffold core instruction. I just want to touch on this briefly, but it's very important to know that students can benefit from multiple modalities when reading. And what I mean by that is maybe one particular student really excels with print, but another might excel with the ebook. Yet and still, a student may prefer a graphic novel. Maybe they're not quite at the reading level of their peers, and so they need a graphic novelization. There are also read-alongs, which would be the text in front of you as well as the audio playing. And then there are strictly audiobooks. So each student may prefer a different modality of reading, which is okay because they're all essentially reading the same book. It's just whatever works best for them. We're scaffolding that instruction. Even still, they may prefer a combination of those. So maybe a particular student needs the print book and the audiobook paired with it so they can hear that narration going as they're reading along. So it's really important to remember that when we talk about student literacy, it may look just a little different for each student, but it's all going toward the same goal. I'm going to show everyone how to log in a moment. I did see someone in the chat say they couldn't find their school. You're not looking for the school, like Michael said, you're looking for NYC Public Schools. Just click on that and log in with your email address, but I'll show you that when we switch to the demo. I mentioned this, but again, you're supporting all learners here. So whether that's students with dyslexia and using some of the different fonts we have, including a dyslexic font that works really well, or using audiobooks for your students with dyslexia. Struggling readers, you can find books or different editions of books that correspond with their reading level or make it easier for them to catch up with their peers. And then again, English language learners, multilingual learners, all of those are supported with the actual content that is in the citywide digital library, all of the languages that are represented. And I want to touch on a few of those. So we have curated lists and titles available in many, many languages, and you can see lots of them appearing right there. We're constantly working on adding languages and securing more languages from publishers. We work with international publishers so that we can ensure that there are not just translation of American published titles, but also books that have been published in the countries that these core languages are coming from. So that way you have all of your bases covered and can support your students no matter what they're looking for. This last one that I want to share here is a really, really important piece that folks don't really think about when we talk about digital books. And I start by just saying, don't be afraid to be seen reading, but many students are. You can worry about books with, let's say, negative stigmas or negative connotations. And so you may have a student that really is interested in reading about something that's going on in their life, whether those are family issues that are happening at home. It could be substance abuse. It could be books that deal with, topics on sexuality. It could be books that deal with body image issues, all of these things. And that student may be reluctant to go into the library, check that book out, and then walk around the school with that jacket cover and that book just showing what they're reading to all of their peers. They may feel uncomfortable doing that. This is, as Laura mentioned, Mental Health Awareness Month. So that is a really big concern as well, making sure that students have the tools that they need to be supported with whatever they're experiencing. But if they have that hurdle in front of them of not even wanting to read those books because they'll be seen reading them, we don't need them to worry about that, because digital books, whether it's an ebook or an audiobook, they can just pull up on their device, whether that's their phone or their tablet or even their computer, and there is no jacket cover. It's just the back of your phone. It's just the back of your laptop. So nobody's seeing what you're reading, and you can read whatever book you need to feel supported with the issues that you're dealing with or that you're interested in. In the same token, you can listen to audiobooks, and nobody needs to know, none of your peers need to know that you're not listening to a podcast or music, but you can be listening to something that can have a deep, deep impact on your life. So again, we don't think about this all the time, but students are reluctant to read certain books, and we want to make sure that that barrier is removed. The other reason students might feel reluctant are if they're reading below grade level. If their peers or their classmates are all reading a particular book and they're the only student in the class that is handed the young readers edition or the graphic novelization of that book, that can be, an experience that really others them. And we don't want that to happen. So if we normalize, reading digital books for anyone in the class that prefers that method of reading, then no one's going to think twice if, one of the students has their iPad out and is reading digitally, and they don't need to know that they're reading a slightly different edition. So this is a really important piece, making sure that our students are supported in their literacy goals wherever they are, whatever they're doing, and they're not ostracized for reading what they need to be reading.
So Regis, can I jump in for a sec?
Please do, yeah.
So I just want to raise that a lot of our schools not knowing about this product or not aware of it. And this does comply with all DOE privacy policies. A lot of schools are using the Get Epic product, which does 100% does not comply. Limits student choice, limits the hours they can read, and there's just a lot wrong with Get Epic. As we stated at the top, this is paid for. It's available 24 hours a day. There are no limits on the reading for the students, and there's no privacy issues on the front or the back end.
Yeah, that's a great point, Michael. So this is completely vetted. You can use it. It's really just raising awareness. So that's what we want to do today, and that's what we want to help you do. And I know I saw a couple questions about sharing this with families. Michael put a great link in there. discoversora.com/NYC has lots of info, and I've got a slide on that later. But that's where I would say that you can start, because it has lots of information that you can then share with families. It's got flyers and things like that. And the last thing before we go into a demo here, beyond just the books that have been provided for you by your NYC Public Schools Office of Library Services and by the central offices, you can also add public libraries. So you all are so fortunate in New York City having access to 3 incredible public library systems, right? New York Public Library, Brooklyn Public Library, and Queens Public Library. And you can add all 3 of those in SORA. I'll show you how to do that. There's just a function that you can see on the screen here that says add a library, and you can go and add their collection as well. Still filtered, right? Still filtered for the student's grade level. You can click here, and I'll send these slides to Laura to make sure that everyone can get them. But this is the Office of Library Services info about how to get public library cards. If you're in New York City or you work in New York City, which you all do, you should have access to be able to get all 3 of those library cards for all 3 collections. Your titles live side by side the ones from NYC Public Schools. So in the citywide digital library, it's all one functionality for the students, very easy. As I mentioned, it is still filtered by grade level. And students can search for a particular book, and if it's not available in one collection, if it's not available at the citywide digital library, for instance, they could get it from NYPL, or they could get it from Brooklyn Public or Queens Public. So very, very easy to do here, but just add access to even more books, even more titles, even more copies from the public library. All right, and now I'm going to switch gears here and share my screen. And I think as we do this demo, I'm going to answer probably a lot of questions that have started to come up. So I'm going to share my screen on a different page. And I'm starting here. So this is just soraapp.com. If you go through Teach Hub, you'll come to this site. If you download the app, again, that's the SORA app. This is exactly what you would see. So it's the same functionality. And I would just say, yes, continue using the New York City public schools. Click on that. Now, some folks are saying, hey, I don't see my school here. These are outliers. These are just some non-public schools that do have access. You're all going to use this big blue button that says sign in using the New York City public schools. So don't worry about finding your school. You're signing in with New York City public schools. Go ahead and click on that. And it will take you to this page. This is just your sign in page. You should all be familiar with this. This is where you sign in with your email address. Again, for you, for staff members, that's your at schools.nyc.gov. For students, that's their at nycstudents.net.
I'll also add that teachers and US parent coordinators will get the multi-factor authentication piece because this is the same as logging into any DOE service. Students do not have that because we do not put MFA on students' accounts.
Thank you, Michael. And I'm going to now get in. So once you're in, if you're using a device or students are using a device that is specific to them, if they're one-to-one, they only need to sign in that one time per year. They will stay signed in for about 360 days, so just about a year. If they're using a device that is shared, we recommend that they obviously sign out after each usage, and they can do that by just coming into this side menu here and scrolling all the way down and clicking sign out. This side menu is also where they can add a library. So you can see I've added Brooklyn Public, New York Public, and Queens Public. I've added all 3 libraries. And you'll see this is also where you can change some of the settings for the site itself. So these are accessibility settings primarily. They can change the font of the site. They can change the backlighting to a high contrast mode, or they could even change the language that the site itself operates in. So this is great for your Ls or MLL students. Excellent. There are other settings there to explore, but those are the main ones that you want to take a look at. Okay. So once we're in the Citywide Digital Library, you'll see 4 tabs at the bottom of the screen here. Those are the primary 4 tabs that you'll navigate with. But the first one that you'll always come to is the Explore tab, and that's where we're going to start. Explore is just where you would explore the library itself, and you'll see it's organized in these different collections. And these collections are changed, you know, if not every month, or if not bi-weekly, certainly every month. And right now it's AAPI month. So you'll see the first list is the Asian American Pacific Islanders collection. Lots of books focused on those perspectives, those topics. If I scroll down, it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. So you'll see those books. There's a collection on learning about global climate change, civics, finances. This is the Lambda Literary list. These are Chinese bilingual books. So you can just keep scrolling. These are magazines, which are fantastic magazines that your students have access to. You can just see all of these different lists that are really excellent. I'm going to stop here. This listen while you read along is a list entirely of read along books. And let me go ahead and select one of those. I'm going to click into C-Bones, and you'll see a little information about the book itself, some reading levels. The ATOS level is the AR level, if you use that, interest level here, and text difficulty.
Yeah.
If I look at the copies, you'll also see there are 25 total copies and 24 are available. So that's something I do want to touch on. This is a library. There are a limited number of copies. Not every book will always be available. If it's not available, instead of the borrow button, you will see the option to place a hold, and students can place a hold, put themselves in the wait list, and they'll get the book usually within a week. Our hold times are very, very short comparatively. So just keep that in mind. If students want to do like a book club, or if teachers want to use it with a class, they just want to make sure there are enough copies to use. So I'm going to borrow this book. Once I've found a book that I'm interested in, I can go ahead and borrow it. This is a picture book, but it's also a read along. So you'll see this play button in the middle of the screen. And before I click on that, I'll just scroll to the side here, keep opening this book. I can click on the right-hand side of the screen, or I can use my arrow keys. All right. And once I'm in a place where I want to be, I'll click the center of the screen to bring this play button back up and click play.
Wonderful creatures live in the sea. Skeletons support the organs and muscles of many creatures in the sea.
So you'll see it's not just showing me the book, it's also reading it to me. Most read-alongs are professionally narrated, just like audiobooks. So this is different than text-to-speech. We do have text-to-speech capabilities within SORA. So if your students use screen readers or need that support, that is supported as well. But read-alongs are great because they, for the most part, have professional narration. It's a real human voice reading to them. So for your students that are younger readers or developing literacy skills, this is great because it mimics that having a story read aloud to you. Unfortunately, we know that every student will not have, parents or parental figures at home that will be able to read stories to them out loud for a number of reasons. Maybe it's just a time issue. Maybe they work odd hours. Maybe they're not native English speakers, whatever. But these read-alongs will help fill that gap, will help provide that support. And you could just press play to continue or continue scrolling ahead in the book. And press play again.
Most fish have a skeleton made of bone. Because it is inside their body, it is called an endoskeleton.
So very easy. And I'm just going to close the book down. I'm going to go back now, and you'll see we're still in this collection that we were in, the listen while you read along. But I'll go back again to our explore page. Now I could continue to scroll through these lists, and that's great. Or I could scroll up to the top here and do a couple of things. I could search for a book specifically, and I could type in the name of a book like Wonder. And you'll see I get the results for New York Public Schools, and I can get Wonder here. Here's another edition right here. Lots of these are on hold. Okay, so what would we do in that instance? Well, let's scroll down. Look at that. It's available at the Brooklyn Public Library. If I scroll down, it's available at the New York Public Library. So this is where the importance of having a public library card is demonstrated. You really want to make sure you have support in all aspects. Now, as I mentioned, if the book that you want is not available, place the hold, because Michael's department, the Office of Library Services, they have budget usually allocated to filling holds. So if they see lots of holds on a particular title, oftentimes more copies will be added. It's just about supporting the usage that is there and the demand. If I go back, I can do a different search. So I just searched for a book in that instance, but I could go to filters here. Maybe I don't know what book I'm looking for, but I know I want a read-along book. I could check that box. Or I know I want a comic book or a graphic novel. I could check that box. Or I could just open it up to any of these subjects, right? Fiction or nonfiction, juvenile, young adult, that's fine. But I can get much more specific here. Beginning reader. If I scroll down, I can look at crime books, cooking books. If I keep going, folklore, all sorts of stuff, geography, games, gardening, humor, all that stuff. Any subject you want to look for, you could just search by subject. But you could also search by reading level. I know lots of schools use Lexile levels. So you could search through a particular range to say, hey, I'm in this 1,000 to 1,200 range. Let me just run a search based on that. And you'll see lots of different books come up. And within that, I could filter it even more to include a subject, or say, hey, I only want ebooks. I don't want audiobooks. Or I only want audiobooks. I don't want ebooks. So it's up to you. So the search bar, again, can be a very simple search, or you can go into filters to have a little more complex search. I'll go back. So I showed you how to search, and you'll see my Lexile score is still being filtered here. So I'm going to take that out. I showed you how to search, and I showed you how to look through these collections by scrolling. But you can also come to this collections tab. And this is where, instead of scrolling through all of them, you could just simply see all the different collections laid out. So it depends what you're looking for here. But if I look These are bilingual lists in both Spanish, Punjabi, Urdu, right? These are, if I scroll down a little bit more, grade level lists recommended by the particular grade. So these are good places to start as well, looking for particular grade level lists. If I scroll down a little bit more, Spanish language, all of this stuff is really excellent. I would encourage you to look through and find what you're looking for. And I want to point out a few. If I look at pedagogy and practice, this is some lists for staff development, professional development lists. These are great places to start. But I'm going to go up and I'm going to look at one of these grade level lists. I'm going to look at, say, the grade 8 collection. Okay. And you'll see a few different things. Number one, if you see a book that has these headphones, this headphone icon underneath, that's an audiobook. If you don't see that, it is an ebook. And so I'll scroll through here. These are vetted lists that have been recommended for students in these particular grade levels. And if I click on one, piecing me together, you can see multiple copies have been added. So these would be great for book clubs. This would be great for students to read together. If I go back, the other thing that's nice about using these collections is that you can share this link. So at the top of the page, you can just copy the URL and share it out to all of your students or the whole grade level or to a particular teacher. And they'll go right to this grade 8 collection. So it's a really fast way to get everybody on the same page. I'm going to go ahead and let's just pick one. So we can do Black Brother, Black Brother. We'll borrow this book. And it's going to open right to the title page. So this is a little bit different because instead of a picture book now, we're in a true sort of novel, right? So this is more typical a textbook, an ebook when you think of an ebook. So I'm going to show you a few different functionalities that we talked about. The first one I'm going to show you is this little column up here. This just changes it from 2 pages to 1. A little bit better maybe for struggling readers to focus. Personally, I like 2 pages of text because it's what I'm used to. The next icon here, this block letter A, this is what we talked about, being able to adjust the text itself and adjust the font. So if I click on this, you'll see I could shrink the text down or I can increase the text size. So now it's a little bit bigger, maybe easier for me to read. If you have students that need even larger accessibility sizes, you can click that option and increase it even more. So these would be like large print books, right? Which can be a little expensive or can be difficult to find. But now you can turn any ebook to a large print book, which is really great. Some of the other things that you can do to adjust the text here, you could change the backlighting. I like the sepia tone because it's a little softer on the eyes. If you read at night or low light, or you just want it to be really easy on your eyes, you could do a dark or a high contrast backlighting, which is great. I'll change it back just for the demo here. And then the last thing, you can change the font or the book design itself. So this is the default. This is what the publisher picked, the font. But maybe I want a little bit different. That's okay. This one is what we would call sans serif, meaning it doesn't have all the little fringes on the letters. It might be easier for students to read. But if I scroll down, you'll see this option, the Open Dyslexic. And this is great because this is a dyslexic font that was developed specifically with students that have dyslexia in mind. So it's going to weight the letters at the bottom. It's going to space all the letters out just a little bit more so that hopefully it's easier for those students to connect with and to read. These are sticky settings. So what that means is when you set this one time, every book that you then open on this device will have these settings already applied. So if I take 2 minutes to set my text to be a little bit larger and to have the Open Dyslexic font, then I don't need to do it again. My books will just open a little bit larger with the dyslexic font. So very easy to do, and it goes a long way.
So Regis, can I jump in for 1 sec?
Please.
I would like to add on top of that, that aside from being sticky, it is a shift in thinking to make the book meet your needs. And that's not something we often do. A lot of us grew up with, you gave the book, you whatever font it was, however big the text was, whatever color it was, those were all things you needed to live with because that's how it was published. With ebooks, you get a lot more flexibility, and it takes it's honestly a shift in thinking to say, how does this book look best for me? And similar settings apply. I don't know if you're going to cover this today, but in audiobooks, you can change the speed of the narration as well. So you can speed it up or slow it down. So it's not just at whatever speed someone chose to read it. If you had audiobooks when you were younger, you probably had the scratch CDs that were 17 long. It came in one speed and you had to change it out ever so often. You had to hunt for whatever you wanted. Audiobooks and Sora are so much better than audiobooks ever used to be in prior formats. So these are all shifts in things that we might have had prior experience with, but are actually completely different now.
It's a great point, Michael. No, it's a great point because it really does require us to think a little bit differently. And maybe you tried audiobooks or ebooks even 5 years ago and you were like, I didn't like it. A lot has changed in that time. So just be open-minded, and I would encourage you to keep that in mind as we continue to go through. So I'm going to shift it back just to the default so that we can see a couple of the other tools that I mentioned. So number one, let's define a word, right? If I look for a word like transformed, this is something that maybe I'm not as familiar with. I will just click and hold this word and you'll see it highlights. And when I release, it gives me the option to define. And I get that dictionary definition, I get some synonyms, but if I scroll down here to the bottom, I also get the option to translate. And this is really great, again, for your maybe bilingual students, your Ls, your MLLs. But not only that, it's going to open Google Translate, and it gives you the option, if I go to Spanish here, to also hear the word read aloud.
Transformed.
So if you're not using a text-to-speech tool and you still need to hear it read aloud, that's a great way to do it. Or even to hear it read aloud in maybe the student's home language, because the student may be bilingual, they may speak Spanish, but they may not be biliterate. They may not have been raised to read Spanish. So being able to hear that word,
Transformada.
oh, now I know what that word is, I can recognize it in English. So that's a great tool to be aware of. All right, I will hide this, and we're going to do the exact same thing. And we're just going to click and hold, but instead of on one word, we're going to highlight a whole passage. And we're going to release that. And now we will select the highlight option. And we can choose different colors here. I love highlighting in books. I really do. And like I said, when I use print books, I've got 3 or 4 different highlighters that I use different colors for. So this is mirroring that. This is great just for students taking notes, but maybe it's also to complete an assignment. Maybe they're highlighting cause and effect, and cause is pink, effect is green, whatever you're doing. You can also make notes here, take a note for later, and save it. So now as I scroll through, I can always click this last icon up here. This is my bookmarks, to jump back to previous things that I've highlighted or taken notes on. So it's always saved in the book. I'll show you how to get those in just a moment. The last thing that you can do here is search through the book. The example I give for this a lot of times is The Great Gatsby, because most of us have read The Great Gatsby. I was an English major. I read The Great Gatsby like 100 times in college. And they always want you to talk about the green light, the green light, the green light, and The Great Gatsby. So in this instance, I could just search for the phrase, the green light, instead of flipping through my paperback copy and taking 20 or 30 minutes to find where they are, because as important as it is, that green light is only mentioned in Gatsby like 4 times. So here I could just quickly search for it and find every instance there. And now the time that I've saved looking for it, I can actually use to reread those passages, become familiar with the significance. So this is great for symbols, for recurring motifs, for finding characters and doing a character study, or just for getting everyone on the same page. So search function, very easy to use there. I'm going to exit out of the ebook, and I'm going to check out an audiobook. So we can check out the Gilded ones here, and I'm going to borrow that. And just quickly, I'm going to show you a couple of the same tools that are in audiobooks and that Michael mentioned. So I'll scroll ahead quite a bit so that we're in the text itself, and you can hear what this sounds like. Before I do that, I'm going to reset it. And that's just a bit of a spoiler, but you can hear what an audiobook sounds like here.
The humble and true daughters of man, for they are unsullied in the face of the infinite Father. Every girl knows it by heart.
So you can hear, again, a professional narrator. These are really well produced. Oftentimes, audiobooks may even have scores, they may have music, they may have contextual sounds and background noises and stuff that adds to the experience of listening to a book. I really recommend these with struggling readers. I really recommend these with reluctant readers. And I recommend these for especially upper grades that are reading kind of difficult texts. Like think about your Shakespeare, think about your dramas that might be read in class, like The Crucible, things that on paper might be kind of dry, but are actually very engaging stories. Hearing them performed can make students much more engaged. So audiobooks are great for those reasons. But maybe you don't love audiobooks because it's a little difficult to focus or pay attention to. That was my experience, full disclosure, when I started listening to audiobooks. And what I realized was the speed of the audiobook just wasn't suited for me. So as Michael mentioned here, I can come up into this first icon, which is like a speedometer, and change the speed. So maybe for your struggling readers, you need to slow it down a little bit. Let's just listen to 0.9 and hear the difference.
We recite it whenever we enter a temple, a constant reminder that women were created to be helpmeets to men, subservient to their desires and commands.
So you can hear it slow down. If I speed it up, which is something that I want for me personally, I thought that the narration was too slow. I wasn't able to focus because it wasn't moving quickly enough. You can hear this.
Are you humble and all the other things, Deka? Father asks. I nod. I think so.
So you can hear speeding it up, it really does not make it that much more difficult for many people, myself included. It makes it more accessible. It makes it so that I can pay attention. I don't start to daydream between, the sentences. So use that speedometer, use that ability to change the speed, as Michael mentioned, to meet the students where they are, to meet their needs. This is a change in the way of thinking. Michael, you're so right pointing that out because we don't typically teach that way. You pass out a book and it is the way it is. But even just allowing students to say, hey, I need the audiobook or I prefer the audiobook, that's step one. Step two is realizing that even within those, there are tools that you can use to customize it even more. I'm going to show you two other tools within an audiobook that are really great. The first one is this little crescent moon here. This is a sleep timer. So you'll see I clicked on that once and it just set it to 30 minutes. So I can set up my device, put my headphones in, set up my phone and just say, I'm going to listen, I'm going to read for 30 minutes and press play. And now I don't have to worry about distractions. I'm just listening. Or I can click it again and I can get even more specific. You see 15 minutes, different intervals. I could slide this, or this option is really great. It'll just read to me until the end of the chapter. And so I can set it to read a whole chapter to me, put my device down, just sit there and enjoy myself as I do that. These are great for commutes. These are great if you're doing other things and instead of listening to a podcast or music or something like that, you can do that. I would encourage you, there's some really great research about audiobooks. If you're reluctant to look into them, audiobooks are highly engaging, highly, highly engaging. There's research that shows that students that listen to audiobooks and also watched the movie, say a book that was made into a movie or a television series, say like a Game of Thrones, their brains were more active listening to the audiobook than they were watching the movie. It's much more active than it is passive because you are connecting the words, you are creating the story in your mind. It's just a different way of delivering it. Instead of reading it off the page, you're listening to it. So I would encourage you, if you're a little uncomfy with audiobooks, look at the literature. It's very, very beneficial for students. And then the last tool I'm going to show you here, if you're listening to an audiobook because that's the way that you engage with text, you still want to be able to take notes and go back to certain passages. So maybe I listen to something, I'll scroll ahead a little bit.
Me. Deka! Deka! A familiar gawkish figure waves excitedly at me from across the road.
So I know something important is about to happen. Maybe I'll go back 15 seconds. I'm going to press play again. And when I do, you'll see I'm going to hold this little bookmark icon on the top and you'll see what happens.
Conduct the spring and winter rituals. The very sight of them sends another surge of anxiety through me. Deka! Deka! A familiar gawkish figure waves excitedly at me from across the...
And now I'll pause it and you'll see a little yellow bar has appeared here. And that's just a highlight. I've highlighted that passage of the audiobook. So I will click on this again while it's highlighted, and now I can make my notes and say, someone's coming to say something. And very easy. I've taken that note now, and I can revisit that anytime the same way that I took a note in my ebook. So audiobooks, very, very great tools for accessibility, for working with students that maybe are on IEPs or 504s, or again, for supporting struggling readers, or just for anyone. Like, they're just easy to use and fun to use. So I'll close that down. So now we've seen how to get to books, how to find books, some different functionalities within the books. I could go back to the Explore page and it's all still there, but I'm going to quickly show you just a few of the other things that are in SORA. First of all, the home page. Don't worry about these assignments. That would be if your school specifically purchased books for a curriculum that you're using. You could assign books. Most of you do not have to worry about that at all. But my books live here, as well as a couple of other places. And I can also see my recent notes and highlights. And that's true even for books that I no longer have checked out. But I could come into any one of these, click on it, and this pop-up is telling me, hey, if you want to take these somewhere else, you can export it straight to Google Drive or as a PDF. So you can do that with any notes and highlights. You can take it out of SORA and use it elsewhere. As I mentioned again, I still have access to my notes and highlights for books that I no longer have checked out. So I will always have access to those in my account, even if I'm no longer reading the book. And then the same thing is true. My recently defined words are all here as well. So I can basically create a vocabulary list for myself, and I can always export that as well. So very easy to use. And I'm going to go to the shelf here. The shelf is the other place where my books live. And what I want to show you here is you'll see these green check marks. That means that the book has downloaded. So automatically, when someone checks out a book in the Citywide Digital Library, it will download to their device. So if they have spotty internet access, if they don't have reliable internet at home, as long as they're somewhere with internet, whether that's at school or at a library or at a McDonald's, whatever, they can check out some books, download them to their device, and they can read them anytime, anywhere. It is specific to whatever device they download them on. So if you download it on your phone and you open your Chromebook, don't expect to see that downloaded there. You'd have to download it on the particular device you're going to use. But very easy, and makes it so that students do not need to be connected to internet at any given time. I'm going to go to this last page here, and this is the Me tab. So a few things. Number one, data lives here. So students can see their own reading statistics. How many books have they opened? How much total time have they spent reading? Average time per session, average time per book, and current streak, how many days in a row. You can change this time frame. I could just look at today, or I could set a custom time frame, but this is basically like a reading log. So when you're independent reading, an important part of that is a reading log, keeping track of that. Well, if you're doing your reading digitally, it will track that for you. So this is very, very easy to use. It happens automatically. So I would encourage you to do that. As we're talking about summer reading, that's a great time to do it. I mean, you want to look back and see, how much did I read over the summer? Or as you're going into your next grade level, your new teacher may want to know, how much time did you spend reading? And if you're reading print or doing something else and you have a reading log, that's great. But if you're reading digitally and you have it here for you, that's even better. That's fantastic. And then some achievements. As students do things in SORA, they earn achievements. So if you're logging in for the first time, you'll see this achievement pop up on the screen. Okay, when you borrow your first book, you will see this achievement. You have achievements for different things. There are achievements for certain activities like making a note, returning a book early, or renewing a book. Great. There are achievements for finishing particular books. There are achievements for reading different subjects, so getting our students to branch out and read different types of books than they're used to, and reading for different parts or different times during the day. So these are great motivators. Students love working to get all of their achievements. So it's a great way to get a class engaged or whole grade level engaged, or create some sort of motivation or even competition within a school. All right, and that is sort of the demo. I'm gonna X out for a second. I'm going to share some resources and then we can go into some questions. So let me just share back into my slides. A couple of the resources, and I saw questions popping up, how do we get in? How do I share this with my families? How do I share this? Discover SORA. So I can share these slides out again. You can scan this QR code right now if you want to. You can follow this link or just go to discoversora.com/NYC. But this has some great information. Number one, login instructions, how to get logged in. E-learning modules, which means that students can go in and do an actual training on how to do a few of the things in SORA that they can just do on their own. Suggested lists by those grade levels. But for you all, what I would recommend are the info sheets and the FAQs. So these are, and I'll actually pull up, you can look at what they are, and I'll show you how to navigate this page. Here we go. So there's a dashboard for students where they can watch a quick 1-minute video on what the Citywide Digital Library is, how they can access it. There's some info on how to log in, very easy, and some quick tips for students. If I scroll back up, you'll see that there is a tab for educators. This is what I'd recommend you all use. So these resources, if I scroll down again, a different introductory video geared toward teachers and educators. But if I scroll down here, all of these resources would be very valuable to you. So these are info sheets and FAQs that you could send to families, to parents. These are printable marketing materials that if you're having like a PTA night or an in-person event, you could have printed out and share with your families. These are multilingual materials, so the same resources but translated into the different DOE languages. And these are social media graphics. So if you are active on, say, Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, we've already created lots of graphics for you. You can just download these and use them specifically. Those are the resources. These are where I would start if I were you. I know we did get a question again about signing in, so I want to show you this one more time for everyone. Please pay attention. This is how you sign in. When you go to the SORA page and you click New York City Public Schools, do not look at these schools. You don't have to. All the public schools will sign in using this blue bar, this option, using your New York City Public Schools login. So this takes you to your single sign-on page. I think Michael mentioned there's two-factor authentication for educators, for staff, so you'll have that aspect, but it's very easy. You don't need to find your school. You're signing in. It's central. You're signing in with the DOE, with New York City Public Schools. And that's all I have for you. So if there are any other questions, please feel free, put them in the chat, or at this time, I'd say you can come off mute and ask those questions. Ask away.
This is Michelle Harrison from
Hi,
PS
Michelle.
195 in Queens. I was just, you just went over how to get on the website and so forth, but when I go on, it doesn't say New York City schools to click on that.
So no problem. If you go on, it should automatically geolocate to say, oh, you're in New York City Public Schools. If it doesn't, that's okay. You can click this option here that says, I don't see my school. Let me search for my school. It will ask to either use your location or to search by name, or I could say I have a setup code and click continue, and my setup code is NYC schools.
Okay.
And it will take me right back to the same sign-in page. When you're sharing this link with your families or with your staff, you could just copy this link on the sign-in page. This is also the link that all of our documentation points to. And those different methods that I just showed you are included in our resources. So the info sheets, the how-to sheets, it all documents all those different ways of logging in.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Michelle?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome, yeah. Any other questions? Anyone else?
Someone wanted to address doing a parent reading group of some kind. I just wanted to address that specifically. And did we discuss content access levels, Regis?
Briefly, but we could go more in depth. Yeah.
So I'll just, in light of that, we have 3 content access levels in the DOE. K through 6, 7 through 10, and 11, 12, and adult. So your parents are going to be using the students' accounts. So only 11 and 12 are going to have access to adult level books or professional books. So if you're looking at like a book for kids, and the kids are all on the same grade level in those buckets, then they could do the same book. But otherwise, they're going to be limited by what the students see, which isn't all the adult books.
Great point. And as far as a parent reading club or a parent reading group, we want to support parents, but this is a tool meant for the students. It's authenticated through their DOE email addresses. So it is dependent on the student accounts. We would encourage parents to log in with their student accounts and work with their students. But as Michael said, if it's a book that the student account wouldn't have access to, go check out the different public libraries. They have the public library version of this as well. Whether that's Libby or at New York Public Library, simply E. So.
Hi, just to clarify, I'm sorry. My
Please,
name
yeah.
is, we will have our students and ourselves, that's the PCs, we will have access throughout the year.
Correct. It's
Yes,
24/7. It's all summer, whether there's a break, whatever. You have access as long as students are enrolled in NYC public schools.
Okay, great. No, because with Epic, there's always restrictions, and then during the summer, they don't have access.
Exactly.
So this is a great, yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And that's a great point, that we want to focus on access and equity. So this is an equitable option. All students have the same access to the same collection of books, right? So it doesn't favor students in a particular borough, in a particular school, and they can access it any time.
Do you want to bring up something else related to content access levels that just kind of came up?
Yeah.
If they are logged in with the CDL, and I said there are those 3 buckets, K through 6, 7 through 10, and 11, 12, and adult. If they're logged into the CDL and the public library, the filters on the CDL, we say that we have, cement ceilings and glass floors. Kids can see down, but not up.
Right.
Whatever applies in the CDL will apply to the public library. So if you want to do parent reading with the public libraries with adult books, they need to sign in with their own account and not the CDL student account, so that those filters don't apply. Does that make sense? Regis, do I have that right?
Yes, and it's a great point. I will reiterate too, if you're not aware, this is really a student app. It's a school app. Parents can use, there are other apps. Our company, Overdrive, does a public library app that's called Libby. If you're not familiar with that, I would extend that to parents because it works with a public library card. It's a fantastic platform. It's basically the same thing for adults. And so part of this is, as students progress and once they get to 12th grade and graduate out of the school system, they'll be trained basically on how to use Libby and how to continue using public libraries for their digital collections. And the New York Public Library obviously too has their app, Simply E. So those are great alternatives if parents want to access with their own public library card. Any other questions? I see one in the chat, how to search recommended books by grade. So I'm sharing my screen. I'm back in SORA. I'll show you this again here. If we click on the search button and we go to filters, this is where I can select what specifically I want to see. So whether it's reading score, and I can use Lexile score here to select books that fall within my reading range, or if it's text difficulty, to say I'm at an 8th grade difficulty, or maybe interest level. So maybe I'm at a middle grades plus, a grade 6 plus interest level, but I'm really only reading at, say, like a grade 5 reading level. I could run the search based on both of those things, and I could click search here, and you'll see I'll get books that are interesting to me, that fall within my own interest levels, and I can see more here, and just continue to scroll through here, but are at a reading level that I can handle. Flyers that we can share with families, yes, and I'm putting the link back in the chat right now. It's discoversora.com/NYC. I would encourage you to go to that link, but I'll go here one more time. If I click on the For Educators tab in the top right-hand side of the screen and scroll down, These are different promotional materials. This first one would work really well for you. These are info sheets and FAQs, flyers that you can share out, or even this next section. And again, we also have the same ones in multiple languages. So not just English, but if you have families whose home language is something else, if it's DOE supported, we have most of those translated as well. So this is for you all, as far as next steps, this is what I'd recommend. Go to this site, go to For Educators, share this with your own school staff, your building staff, so they're aware of it and they can prepare students in the classroom for summer reading by getting them on. But then go down here, download these materials and select which ones you're going to share with families. Because we want to make sure in the next month and a half or so lead up that we have to summer reading that folks know about this, that they're supported with this, because again, it is 24/7 access. They will have access all summer. So this is a great way to prevent that summer slide, making sure that they have access to books all the way through summer. It's also great too, once they get their summer reading list, a lot of those books will be reflected in the collection. They can just grab them here. There's no need for them if they were going to buy it anyway. Good question here. Has this information been shared with administration, principals, etc.? I'll be very honest with you. Yes, but we also know that they've got a billion things going on and not all the schools are using it. We know overwhelmingly that schools that have librarians in it have been using the CDL and SORA much more than schools that don't. And so that's fantastic, but we know lots of schools don't have librarians. So we're spreading the word through every avenue that we can, working to let more principals know, working to let literacy coaches know. Everyone on this call obviously is a part of that. So share it out, send an email to your principal to say, hey, did you know about this? Should we promote this? Send an email if you have a literacy coach or someone in the school that heads that, let them know. So the answer is yes, it has been shared, but it's also been overlooked by many schools, I think. And yes, if you have a school librarian, reach out to them. They're probably doing a lot already to promote it. So continue working with them, ask them what the best way to continue to promote this is. But as Michael says, unfortunately, there are many schools that don't have librarians. I will mention, I saw this a long time ago in the chat, but someone mentioned, I think it was Linda mentioning, get rid of your Audible account. You do what you want with your free time and your apps. I'm just saying this is an opportunity to access these books, these digital books, whether it's ebooks or audiobooks, in a way that is no cost. And whether that's Audible or Epic or any other tool that's using it, we know that creates a system in which it breeds inequity. So students that can afford the cost of a book, can afford the cost of reading, outside of school, are benefited, as opposed to every student having access. Question here in the chat, do you have any books for parents? Again, parents don't have their own login. Students are the ones that have the logins with their DOE email address. But yes, there are tons of books here that are super popular. We have lots of teachers, lots of librarians that say to us all the time, like, hey, I read books for fun in here. And so I would encourage you to go check it out, see what kind of books are in here that you may want to read as well. I see a hand up. If you want to come off mute, feel free if you have a question.
Yes, thank you for having us. Thank you so much. I'm the parent coordinator from the PS 506. So much, thank you so much for the information. I have a question. So let's see a student from 3rd grade and log in with the DOE email account, right? So on the Explore page, all the books recommended will be like age appropriate.
That's a great question. Yes, all the books recommended will fall within a particular, we call it a content access level. As Michael said, there are 3. So a 3rd grade student would see books that are at the elementary level. And that group of books would be available to students in grades K through 6. Okay. So that age range, they won't see anything that is deemed inappropriate in that way.
Got it. But they also have the access to all the other books in SORA?
No, they won't
No.
see any
Okay.
books that fall outside of their level. So something that might be a middle school book, like a 7th grade book, they
Mhm.
won't even see. So you as staff members will see all of the books. And there
Okay.
may be some books that you see that your students in 3rd grade, they won't even, if they searched for the book in Sora, they wouldn't even see the jacket cover.
All right. Thank you so much for your help. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. And that's a great question. And Michael said, it's all managed on the back end by DIIT. So students don't need to be confused. We do that so that they don't see books, want to check it out, and then says, oh, sorry, you don't have access. They just don't even see it. So when they log in, we automatically verify their grade level. And that's how we handle that.
It's similar to like a physical library, because I remember when I was in the library, I was in my elementary library, I didn't have middle school books, I didn't have high school books. So the same
Exactly.
way that, like, you know, when I had a kindergarten class, like they technically have access to the entire library, but no, they're not picking Harry Potter because they're too little and they're not going to read that. So I know where these questions kind of head towards. It's like they're going to see a range of books. Generally speaking, they're not going to pick something that they don't have much interest in and is well beyond their reading level.
It's a great point, Laura. And Office of Library Services, Michael's team, Melissa Jacobs, who heads that department, they've made sure that if there is a particular range of books, again, say K through 6, that there's no concern with the content in the book. That the books that even are on the higher end of that will be appropriate for those younger members of the group, but they won't be, it's as Laura said, they just wouldn't be interested in reading them. It would be outside their reading level, but there's nothing concerning there that if they did check that book out, they would see. So, and as Michael mentioned, we call it sort of glass floors and cement ceilings because they cannot see up into a middle school or high school level. But the middle school students could read down, and that's especially to help students that are maybe reading below grade level, have maybe fallen behind some of their peers. So that's something that they could always go back in and get those lower level books. I know we are wrapping up here on time. If there are any other questions, please feel free or to email Michael or myself or follow up. I will follow up, Laura, with you to get you these slides so that everyone has them. But I feel like at this point, we should probably hand it back over to you if you have anything to close with.
Can I just have one more second, Regis? Sorry.
Yeah,
So I was
please.
just asked to recommend that parent coordinators, if you guys want to run your own book group, or if you see a book that you need to support your work and it's not available, please email us, email me and Melissa. We'll do our best if it fits to get copies of it. But we want to support your work as well. But that's different than parents who are limited to their students' accounts, whereas you are all adults, you are all in the DOE, you have access to everything. So if you want to run your own internal book group, that's entirely doable. Anyway, I'm sorry, but thank you so much for your time, and we hope this was supportive of you and your work and your students. And if there's any way we can help build school library programs in your schools, please email me. Or if we can support CDL in other ways in your schools, please let us know. We want to help. Okay, now we can turn it back.
Honestly, thank you both so much. This has been super, super helpful. I mean, I hope if you didn't know about SORA before this, I hope you are now completely on board. You're like, wait a minute, I'm checking out my first book like as soon as this is over. It's really, really great. It's a great application. And again, you can see the variety of uses. I know some folks are like, I want the parents to use it, but there's ways to get around that. And, you know, honestly, get them into the public library system, right? You know, there are things available for parents, and we should all be leveling up our skills the same way you guys come to these type of workshops and you train and get better. Do the same for your parents. They do want the information. So with that, we have been dropping into the chat and we'll continue to drop it, but there is a link for our attendance. Make sure you fill that out before you boogie on out for today. Today's session is preparing for summer reading with SORA. You'll get a follow-up email after after this session that will allow you to get CTLE. So for those that need it, that's a separate email. By filling out the attendance form, that is how you get access to the email with the CTLE information. And again, today's session is called Preparing for Summer Reading with SORA. It's all listed alphabetically, so just hop on down to the P's. Again, thank you all so much. I know there's a lot of folks who are like, oh, we don't have a school librarian. Look, vacate, okay? This is the time of year where, you know, maybe schools are starting to hire, you're starting to realize, you know, what you need in your building. Chancellor Banks just announced a whole initiative around reading, kind of left some librarians out, but they are integral to this work, okay? As you can already see, schools that don't have a school librarian you're behind the curve. You probably didn't even know you had SORA. So all the more reason, advocate. Go back to your school, tell your administration, tell your teachers about this, and advocate for a school librarian. It's actually a state mandate. We're all supposed to have a school librarian in our schools, okay? It's a travesty that we don't have enough of them available, okay? But like I said, hopefully this is a place where, you know, we've got all of you fabulous folks in here. You are seeing the power of what a librarian and this type of tool in a librarian's hands can do. So come on. Did I do a good enough job, Michael? Do you think we'll get some more librarians?
I hope so. I mean, we want to provide the services to the teachers, to the students, to everyone. And, you know, if we can help build that in your school, we absolutely want to. Of course, it's a more involved conversation because I don't have a magic pot of money that I can just employ librarians across the DOE. But we're happy to start working in that conversation, showing how you can leverage it so that you get more bang for your buck with all your other purchases.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, everything we do should be strategic. You know, it doesn't always feel that way. I should stop this recording. What am I doing? Hold on.